My name is Curt Aumiller. I wanted to think about like what inspired me from the very beginning. What was the thing that actually kind of triggered like this whole idea of imagining and dreaming. These are some of the. I'm going to talk about three things that actually have motivated me over time. But imagining and dreaming was one of those things. Um, and the earliest memory that I have of imagination and dreaming was this time period back in 1977. Uh, in a little drive-in in Iowa. I was like 6 years old, and Star Wars came out. And none of this work is mine. This is all the artwork and paintings of Ralph McQuarrie. And little did I know at that time, like Ralph McQuarrie was he was an industrial designer, right? And he has a very unique story in itself, and the fact that Ralph McQuarrie, he was the guy that was responsible for doing the envisioning and imagining of the screenplay for George Lucas. And George Lucas at that time was shopping his story around to multiple studios, and I try and imagine like reading a comic book without the visuals, and it's like he without him, I don't think that movie would have been made, right? Like they needed something to pitch to the studios in order to get that production made. Anyway, at a young age, I didn't understand how any of this happened, but this was like really like inspiring. I would see, his box art on different things, and I would see it on the back of Topps cards, these bubblegum cards, and I'd see his paintings and that kind of thing. Of course, multiple artists over time throughout the Star Wars history, have all inspired me as well. But I think this is kind of like my earliest memories in and around like that sort of inspiration. We moved to Southern California at a younger age, and I was exposed to the whole automotive culture at that time. But again, like how do people do these things, right? Like, I mean, I had chance encounters with people that were working at Boyd Coddington and fabricators that were doing interiors at that time. My dad was actually, also, doing photography for some of these people, and it was kind of like some of the first inclinations in and around that space that I was inspired about car design. But the how really didn't happen, until I met this lady, Lauren Davis. She made the connections for me. Everything in the past was really just about imagining and dreaming, but she was really kind of making the connections for me. Like many students before me and after me, she created this program in our high school for honors programs in public schools, which was kind of unheard of in the public school space. And she invited multiple schools around the country to come visit our school. So when you first see these catalogs from Art Center and CCS, Cleveland, Cincinnati, you're like, man, this is really awesome work. And so it's at this point that I want to talk about ambition and motivation. And I, definitely had the desire and went to school at CCS, just like Max. You're to like look at the numbers of students that joined at the time that we did. I think the numbers were like something like 85 students would start at one time, but in the end, like only like 15 or 18 of us would actually graduate. So you had to be motivated. You had to have the ambition and the drive to get through a program like that. Some of the things I like to talk about CCS is like the wall. There is a certain truth about the wall, that when you're competing against the best, it's when you've brought your best, because you can see what other people have done, in and around your space. It's important also not to fall into this sort of microcosm of like, we're all competing against one another in our class, but really there's a much broader world out there now, right? You know, you have to think more globally. There's students from around the world that are also bringing, you know, their best, and so it's important to be aware of like all of the things that are going on around um, around the world. So, um, you know, yeah, I graduated in the transportation design program. I did have a hiccup along the way. I didn't wasn't going to talk about this, but now I'm going to. But uh, I when I first joined, I did procure a slot in the transportation design program, but I had to take some time off in between, and so it wasn't a clean, clear path, you know, to getting to the end. Um, I had to take a year off, earn some money to come back to school. I lost my spot, the transportation design program, so like I had to resubmit to get back into that program once again. So I did have a year of product design, and then finished in the uh, automotive program. Not everyone, you know, gets a automotive job right out of school. Like it's, you know, kind of rarefied that, you know, someone can, you know, immediately land a position right away. I, I myself was not one of those lucky people. I actually had to, you know, work at multiple suppliers before I was able to get a position at Ford Motor Company. Um, and I'm going to show some of the work from that time period. This work is like ages. This is like over 10 years now. Like it's a couple generations old. This is the last program I worked on. So this is like I worked on the Edge and Lincoln MKX program. Um, it was an exterior program. These are some of the images from that. I worked on lots of components on these vehicles, so lots of wheels. I worked on every single wheel on this program. Not every theme is my theme, so it's important to state like there's like lots of people working on these programs. So for like an exterior program, there's probably at least 3 designers, plus you have management folks, and then for interiors, you have equally at least 3 designers working on interiors. So a lot of the ideation and the work that I was doing, hand drawing. I worked in the truck and SUV studio. This is the first Brazilian EcoSport. So this is the first vehicle that entered the Brazilian market. It was a fun program. We had people coming from Brazil to work with us. It was unique in the sense that this was even like a partnership with the Brazilian government. It was kind of a strange program, but Ford is, I still believe they're making EcoSports there. There's new versions of the EcoSport there. That was primarily an interior program that I worked on. And then I worked on also the Escape and Mariner programs. And then in around about 2007, we had our daughter, and that was kind of a big deal. Thinking about that time period for Ford and for a lot of the auto companies in Detroit around 2007, they were struggling a bit, and you know, Ford at that time was like laying off a ton of people. They were anticipating some market downturn happening. I remember a chief designer, newly promoted, like really awesome guy. Because he was the last one promoted, he was the first one they let go. And even my cube mate was let go. I was like, okay, I really should think about my future. I have a family now, and I should think about like what else is out there, right? I've worked on at least 10 different vehicle programs. They all have 4 wheels and they're styling exercises. What else is out there for me? And anyway, I submitted portfolios to multiple companies. I did hear about a position at Microsoft. There was a position in and around Microsoft Surface, which was very attractive to me. And so I interviewed at Microsoft. It was one of the more intense interviews that I've ever had. So it was like a group interview at the very beginning. It was at least 10 to 12 people, and then one-on-one sessions throughout the day. And so what I liked about that whole interview process with them, it was really about them not only like learning about me, it was also an opportunity for me to like learn about them and learn what is it that you guys do here, and who would I be working with. And um, uh, there was some apprehension on both sides. I think it was interesting. Non-design folks would ask me questions in the one-on-ones like, so you've worked on these large vehicles. How can you, do you see any problems with working on something smaller? So that was a kind of a funny thing to ask, but like, it's really similar design processes. So like if you think about um, ideation and concept development, doing your research, going through production, like there's a process, that you follow. And I think if you adhere to the process, um, you can go wrong. So anyway, the team that I did join was Microsoft Surface. This is not my work. This was what attracted me to the team. It was this whole new interface. It was a natural user interface in the sense that you can now have real physical objects interacting with a touchscreen. This is 2008. So, but it was fairly large, right? It had this moniker being known as the big ass table because you can actually get your feet under it. It was like this big giant table. It had some success in like hotels and different commercial applications, AT&T stores and that kind of thing, where people could actually put phones on it or glassware, and it would recognize that, if your glass was full or empty, or so it was a full like vision system. So I worked on the next version, which is this guy. It's a much slimmer version, a different kind of technology that was still touch and also had the capability of using vision and different kinds of sensors to make that happen. Maybe this is foreshadowing, but it was a partnership with Samsung that we worked together on. So every sensor on this table was like a individual IR pixel, so it could actually capture all those different interactions with like physical objects and stuff. So we did some variations on different legs. We produced developer kits for software folks to actually interact with this display. So like, we often would hear from developers that, oh, we don't have any physical objects. And I'm like, well, there's glass, right? You can, or Post-it notes and things like there's real world physical objects that you can use to make things happen. But we were like, maybe this could be inspiring for them. So we created these kits that, had like visors to shield like words, or maybe you had account information or banking information. It was to hopefully inspire them to want to like develop new software for this. That team split, and then I joined the hardware team, and I worked on some compelling mice and keyboards. But really, like, what inspired me to join Microsoft was this whole new technology in and around touch interfaces. And once again, I had heard about a team opening up in San Jose, and somebody had called me up and said, "Hey, you should check out this guy who's this MIT grad. He's starting up a new program at Samsung, and it's just starting. It's this think tank team." I looked him up. I started checking him out. I'm like, oh man, this guy, he was responsible for the inspiration for Minority Report with all these air gestures and this kind of thing. So I I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. It was just a handful of us at the time. It was like, um, 3 to 5 of us and a handful of interns that were starting this team. And I'm going to play a little video that will kind of give you the feel of what kind of team this is. But we're a research team, but maybe a little bit more than that. So this is my team, the think tank team. We're a group about diversity of ideas, science, design, and engineering, and strategy all coming together. We're a group of diverse talent, lots of different disciplines, working all under one umbrella. So yeah, we have architects and physicists on the team. We have great mechanical engineers and electrical engineer guys. But yeah, we have these like expertise in all these different like arenas. We want to have impact. We want to have impact on the world, impact on the business. We like to think of our team as like a complete holistic process in the sense that we're not just design, we're not just engineering, we're not just research. We're kind of trying to bring everything all together as a complete package. And then I'm going to talk about maybe just a few projects. There's a bunch of projects that we've done. Like I can't show everything that we've done. Much like some of this stuff that I've already shown is a bit sanitized already, unfortunately. But you can also see more about some of the projects that we've worked on from our website. Anyway, this is the first project that we started when I first joined. It's called Project Small. And I'm going to play a little video here. So that's Project Small. This is 2012, so before there was any wearables in the market, and it was even before Samsung was even thinking about wearables in the market. So our team basically proved this out. We took this 2 executives at Samsung Korea and presented this multiple times, and created a whole new division within Samsung. So I was responsible for the hardware, the look and feel of the product itself. We had other people on the team. We had visual designers and graphic designers, and of course, we had to have the engineering to back up everything, prototype everything. But a lot of challenges, right? So how do you go about making a whole new interface for a round interface? And so these are some of those images. The ring is also like kind of an important detail for the interface. It's both physical and digital. So the ring was actually a means of actuating and dialing to different features on the watch. Also, then you had the digital aspect. If you were capturing an image, it was super important that your finger didn't obscure what you're actually looking at. So it was also a good rationale for not using touch for everything, but actually going through the effort of making a physical ring with a digital interface. So we had some great motion people on the team that were doing motion graphics and visual design for the different elements and features. The video is super great in the sense that the idea of even a child being able to use this piece of technology, and then the aspect of like extending your human capability or exploring like those kinds of things were what I really enjoyed about this video. Again, some more digital interfaces, some prototyping, sketches, that kind of thing. Yeah, did a lot of testing, lots of models, lots of cosmetic models. It was really salient to like figure out how many detents this thing needed. Some people would think, oh, we need 60, or what really was the kind of happy medium was like at least 24 detents, because 60 detents could really kind of be hard for a user to actually precisely move to those elements on the watch itself. So that's Project Small. And then another big program that's spawned into like multiple projects is Project Serum. It was a robotics program, also known as Bot Chef. If you were to think about introducing a robot into the home, which we would like to call like a cobot, something that would actually make you more capable in the kitchen, possibly. There's a lot of learning along the way. For us, it was really super important and to design this in a way that it didn't feel industrial, like it felt like it could be a part of your home. It could actually be a consumer product. The engineering side of things would want, of course, something that would have paddle grippers. This guy actually has 2 fingers and a thumb. I wanted like a shorter thumb, but like I lost that battle. It's actually, in order to be functional, it needed to have, some, 2 fingers and a single digit in order to make those closures. It was not novel that everything was all kind of like linear, and in the sense that it was all those motors and drivetrains that were helping drive this bot design all be in alignment. That was a huge challenge for our engineering to make that happen. If you look at some industrial bots in the market, they're not really concerned about the design so much. You'll see like giant offsets. They may look presentable or nice, but I don't think it's a bar that they're really thinking about in the sense of making it feel like a consumer product. it's purely function only in some of those cases. These would be like different end effectors that you could put on the end of the bot to make it even more capable. This was shown at CES. We also showed at IFA in Germany a different variation. You can see that from our website, where it's actually working with chefs, real chefs, and making a salad for the people at that show. This here is just highlighting a few things. The bot is actually, we're implying that the bot would, if you had two arms, it could actually hold an item and then cut things along the way. But we were thinking about how to do this over and over, throughout the day at a CES presentation, and having real food there all the time when working this scenario. So we were projecting a lot of that work on the tabletop, some of those features, and was doing. Yeah, so here's some other images of it. These are the early incantations of it. For me, it's the third thing that it really motivates me now more than anything is the people and teams. And I think we have like a really awesome team. I wanted to show a behind the scenes video clip. Yeah, so anyway, like I said, like I think I'm a better designer for working with these different individuals on our team, from all these different kinds of backgrounds. Working with the best just makes you better. And then I've been watching Power of the Ring, and made me think about this recent quote from the Fellowship of the Ring. I don't know if anybody cares or likes the recent series, but like this quote resonated with me, this idea of maybe the paths that you each shall tread are already laid before your feet before you do not see them. And I guess the whole idea around this is that, if you were to ask my younger self my path, like I would be working at Microsoft and Samsung one day, and I would be working on this whole research team, I would tell you, I would not envision this career path that I've had. I feel very lucky and fortunate that I have been able to work on a lot of great teams and work with like a lot of great people. I think about like a lot of the Ford folks I used to work with, and the craftsmen and modelers that I used to work with, and all these people that I used to work with in the past, and the people now. It's even really, really, really great that we have like a really great team of people that we work with. We like to call them ninjas. We call people that kind of have like these deep experiences in like fields, like ninjas of that field. So yeah, we have a lot of those ninjas on the team. Anyway, that's my presentation. If you guys can, if you want, you can check out more about our team at Think Pink Team Info. And then thank you. If you guys have any questions, I think Max, you had some questions for me?
Yes, thank you, Curt. This was a great journey to see you from a young child being fascinated by on-screen robots to literally designing C3POs for the home. um, yeah, so I've got a couple questions for you, and then we'll have some student submitted questions that we can dive into. Um, so my first question tonight is which is kind of interesting because you've had a bit of a change within your profession within the industry. Outside of the design industry, what profession would you like to attempt?
Yeah, so this is a cop-out answer, but I'm going to say I would still be an industrial designer, but I would like to dabble. I think it would be fun to dabble in the production side of things, like for film. I I admire the work that those people do. I don't know if I have that capability or that talent. I know quite a few people that are doing it, students and people, peers that we've worked with in the past, who are in the film industry. Uh, I I get a touch of that when we're doing some of our projects, even so, like all of the footage, film footage that you see, like all the videos that you see online from us, those are all internal. These are projects, and like the people that you see in the videos,
Right.
those are people from our team that are actually we hire some actors, like the kid, for instance, was actually an actor, but um, being a part of that experience is actually really fun. So storyboarding out like a whole like experience, and then like you we're actually building the physical props that are in those videos. So like we have some connection, but I think the fantasy would be to, yeah, of course, be doing like something like the film work behind me or something like that, some sort of sci-fi stuff in the future.
Right, right. Now, I think that's a draw for a lot of us that we see these things on screen, and you always wonder, okay, what would I have done?
Yeah.
So on the opposite side, what profession would you least like to have to do?
Yeah. I thought about this and I'm like, man, I would not want to be a politician, but this this ties into something else, though. Like our team, which is really cool because I was a part of this when it started. Was like I wanted it to be different from some of the past experiences that we've had. Uh, some of us in our careers, like we work very flat. So like, what does that mean? What does our team mean when we're working flat? Well, um, sometimes when we hire interns, they could be like leading a project, which is super cool. Um, uh, yeah, you might end up having somebody that is like a project lead on a given project, but there is no. I have to appeal to my manager and then appeal to a chief designer or now a director, this kind of thing. Like, there's no hierarchy of people on our team that are actually like trying to you know move up the ranks, with appealing to
Right.
people, um so no politicians on
Gotcha.
our team.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The people that are on our team they're actually uh, they're on the team because they want to make an impact, they want to make a difference, they want to produce cool product, they want to you know change people's lives. So yeah.
That's really kind of an interesting opportunity at uh, what some might consider an extremely corporate environment, and you're getting the opportunity to kind of work within a kind of broken corporate culture from a traditional standpoint.
Yeah, I should explain our team a little more. So like because when we first started, we um, it was all new. We had a chance to kind of tier ourselves into like a a very specific division. Like we could be working exclusively to the mobile division if we wanted to, but very early on, we were like, we want to create our own products. We want to create our own product ideas. And we kind of operate as a startup with corporate funding within Samsung under the Samsung Research umbrella. But we're able to talk to like many different teams. We're not exclusive to any one team. And so, we're very fortunate in that way. So
that's a lot of freedom. That makes it pretty amazing to be able to tap into all these different inputs and outputs for you.
Yeah, freedom can also be hard too in that way. So just,
can you touch on what are some of those hard parts of that freedom?
You can actually have too many ideas, right? And so ideas are cheap sometimes. It's really the execution and what you can execute, and what kind of experiences and things do you have on the team that really can you pull that off. And like we have these internal challenges on the team to kind of build up new ideas and bubble up new ideas. People have opportunities to explore ideas and bring them in personal projects, even to like make it a thing. Of course, like something that is biological, right, may not be like something that's super specific, or we don't really have that kind of capability. But we do have people on the team that are very much into the health sector. Do like look at like for me to talk about it is strange, but like they're going deep into like the algorithms of heart rate and these kinds of things, and they're able to like pull out some of those kinds of things. But like it's making those decisions sometimes can be hard, like which things do you cut, which things do you bring forward. Those are the hard things.
Sure. Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so before we dive into some student questions here, how would you like to be remembered?
Of course, I'd like to be remembered as a good father. and then having an impact, and hopefully I'm able to have some influence in other people's lives, helping make people's lives better. I think most designers would like that, out of the things that they're doing. So yeah,
have some lasting effect on others. I think that's probably something you have already, if not will for a long time achieve, Curt.
Thanks.
So we have a couple of questions, and they're continuing to filter in. So I'll start up here with, for your Microsoft Surface project, what were some ways that work for you to help convince the stakeholders that might have had doubts in, let's say, product viability? Were you on that side of it, or what were the tools that you gave to the people to help validate those ideas?
Right. So yeah, I mean, if we're talking about my Ford days, it was definitely about picking different themes mostly. Like if you're sometimes some of those vehicle programs, it was like we kind of knew some things moving into that program, and it was like the stakeholders are very easy, I think, in a car program versus stakeholders in the tech industry. So like Microsoft and Samsung, those industries stakeholders are much more different, in the sense that you have to think about market and like strategize like who's in charge of this experience, right? And sometimes like for Project Small, there was no division at that time. We talked to multiple groups. We talked to mobile at that time, we considered them like an early stakeholder in probably that experience. And then, that's when I believe that's when they branched that off and were able to develop that a little further out. Um, Stakeholders on our team are very easy to, like, if it's like internal within our team, it's like, I think we know who those people are. So like if there's an engineer that's, on the program, or somebody walking by, I can grab them and say, hey, tell me a little bit more about this project, or let me tell you about this project, and give me your input on it. It's very organic in the way that we work internally, but like the external stakeholders are kind of a different animal in those other companies like Microsoft and Samsung.
Great, great. So you talked a bit about how your team is kind of a flat team, and you seem to have a pretty solid dynamic with them. How do you create those teams, and how is it, how is it to work with all these creatives and people from other industries, if you will?
How do I work with them? But I think that it's simple, really. I mean, I feel like we were very fortunate. Like I said, like at the very beginning of creating this team, like I think we finding like-minded souls, people that are kindred in spirit, in the sense that they want to make a difference. They're also super talented. They're also curious. They're also wanting to learn as well. I feel like I'm multi-talented in a way that or the other people on the team have made me more multi-talented in that way of like putting myself in their shoes and like understanding and learning about what's important to them. They know it's important to me because I talk about it, and they talk about their experience as well. And so it's really important to like get into their shoes, like learn about like what it is that it is important to them. And I think it's important not to be arrogant about like, oh, it's got to be this way. The design has to be like a very specific like look and feel. But sometimes you have to step back a bit and listen to what is being mentioned. Sometimes the design is more important. It's really kind of prioritizing, thinking about the kind of bar that you're setting for this product or thing or software experience, or like any kind of experience, right? Like there's a certain measure bar that you're trying to get to. And so yeah, it's very easy. I feel like it's very easy. It's very organic on our team. It's I don't see there's any really big challenges in how we operate or work. Yeah,
Well,
it's
this
not
kind of
structured.
actually this kind of leads into the next question of how do you actually make design decisions in that sense when there is a lot of openness and you're bringing a lot of ideas to the table. How are you able to let's say make a decision between like how the fingers are shaped if 4 different people come up with the concepts?
Yeah, so um, we go through like an iterative process, like just much like going through an ideation process or concept development phase. Sometimes sometimes the sometimes projects are not quite ready for design yet. And what do I mean by that? Like, so like there are some projects on our team where the science needs to develop a little further, the engineering needs to develop a little further before there's something that I can sink my fingers into and actually talk about.
Right.
I think one example I can mention, you can see this on our website. we did this project Beyond, and basically it was a new 3D 360 camera system. And if you look at that camera system, every other camera is actually the distance of your eyes. And the first generation of this, we wanted to test it. We didn't really know if we had something here that could do what we thought it could do, right? And I was totally fine of stepping back, let them think about it, right? This is not a time for design to jump in at this point in time. The engineering needed to develop a little bit further. But it was just a series of webcams at that time. It was like a series of webcams to test the process to make sure it could actually work and do what it, we thought it could do. And then, you learn like, oh, there's an event coming up, and then you're like, okay, well, we're not showing a bunch of webcams. We need to kind of show kind of a vision of where this product is going to go and what it could potentially be. Really at that time, it was only like maybe a couple of industrial designers on the team at that time. It was very early days. There's more of us now that are on multiple projects and stuff. And so every now and then we potentially are able to like both, kind of compete against one another on the team a bit on themes. But this was something I could actually just own, and like I could kind of envision what this would already look like and develop some concepts in and around it. And it was a very fast process. And then I think what we showed on stage was very close to what eventually it would go into production. It was very close in sort of like the package, the overall package, but it adhered to like a lot of the main engineering constraints and packaging that was required. So I don't know if that answers your question. It seems like every project is a little bit different on our team, and there's never like a straight line to anything. Like I feel like if I was a part of the mobile team and I was developing like the next S23 or S24 or whatever, like they have a very like probably rigid process, and they're like, well, okay, well, they're gonna introduce probably these next new features, and there's a plan for a new design, and they probably go through some small phase of like designing within that constraint and time frame. And but it seems like every project is a little bit different, and sometimes some of the talent on our team is very hands-on too. So like some people, their super power or skill is modeling. So like sometimes the way that they communicate is through making models, and that's a perfectly fine way of like presenting your idea in and around that space.
It's great. It sounds like you have really developed a bit more of an in-house, out-of-house design studio that kind of breaks and goes in between the culture of not only the business models or business sectors within Samsung, but also gives you the ability to choose the right process for the right project.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Could you talk a little bit about the interview process at Microsoft, and what's that like to go in as, obviously you were already an experienced designer, but at that point, what is the necessarily more like what you need to bring, who do you talk to, how do you talk to them?
Sure.
In that sense.
Yeah. So yeah, going into that interview process, I gave it lots of thought. I recommend that people don't take interviewing for granted. Like if you're going to interview for a company, like take it seriously. don't show up in jeans and don't show up, very cavalier about your work. Have a certain seriousness to the work that you're presenting, and a tone that you know says that you're also serious about the work that you're doing, so that they know that you mean business. You're there to actually deliver the goods. Yeah, so I I think it's important to, if you can, sometimes, if you can bring objects to an interview. I didn't bring any. I couldn't bring a car, but at this time it was like, I think it's important to bring like a portfolio, something that that you can actually walk them through a process. Mine was a physical portfolio that I showed. I think for them, they were thinking, oh, he's gonna plug in a laptop and he's gonna project his presentation through a PowerPoint presentation. And I I didn't feel comfortable in the sense that, like, I could control the conversation, right? And for me, it was like I wanted to be able to control the conversation by showing the physical images in person. Like, I felt like, and it was a very large format that I was presenting them in. Um, and sometimes the color isn't right on the screen. Sometimes you want to have a backup. My experience going to Samsung and presenting to them was different in the sense that I had both the physical and a digital representation of both. But at that time, when I presented to Microsoft, it was purely just a physical sample of my portfolio. But I could control the conversation. I could walk them through. I didn't have to worry about connecting to some other device. Will my device connect with theirs? If I have a Mac and they have a Windows machine, like there's all these like multiple things that go through your mind, right? So like when you're going through a presentation. And so I think being comfortable in your own skin and not being afraid to answer those questions, and realize like there is no right or wrong answer, really truly. They really just want to get to know you. And that's how I kind of treated it. I think there was one question, and this guy ended up becoming like a very close friend of mine. He asked me this question. He said, so if you were to design a bathroom for Bill Gates, but you could not interview him personally, how would you go about that? It was like, at that point, I was like, okay, this is a very strange question. And but I was like, there's no right or wrong answer. So just have fun with it. Right. So, and I did, I had fun with it. So I think it's important to, recognize those moments if you can, like if you have the foresight to kind of recognize like, this is really just kind of getting to know me and know my thought process, know how I think, and explain yourself. Yeah, I think that's the best thing I can offer in that sort of interview process. And then there was all the one-on-ones. Like the one-on-ones were like individual interviews with like all kinds of disciplines. So we had marketing people coming to talk to me. I had user researchers talking to me. I had engineers that were on the team that were interviewing with me. And so, yeah, they all asked very different kinds of questions. And yeah.
So be prepared for a long day. That's what you're saying.
Yes, it is a long day. And I really felt like after that whole experience, I was like, okay, if they're this serious about me, I'm, like I could see this happening. Like this could potentially be something. And so, yeah.
No, perfect. That's I think great advice for students looking at these both larger companies. I think even at smaller companies, that advice of they're looking to get to know you, not the work is kind of, you have to already pass a certain line or you don't get through the door anyway.
Yeah. So this is what I tell people is like, if I've seen your portfolio and you've come in to interview with us, like you, you're pretty much golden unless, you know, it's yours to lose, right? If
Right.
you're invited to come, if you're invited to come and interview with any sort of company, it's yours to lose, really, because they're taking the time, they're spending a whole day, they're spending, I don't know how many hours and dollars to like have those people all come and interview you that day. Like it's yours to lose. So like you that's why you take it seriously. That's why you um have a thought process, you know, you talk about your process. Um yeah.
Great. Um, you mentioned how influential Ralph McQuarrie was in forming the vision for Star Wars. Is there a dream franchise you would like to reimagine for the screen? Considering your alternate
Whoa.
job reality would be in
Yeah.
prop or production design.
Wow. Um wow. Um Reimagining. So I have to think of like a really bad film and then come back to you.
Okay. We'll come back to that one at the end.
Maybe Forbidden Planet. I don't know. Like it's so old and like I don't know. Like the
There's some
uh,
really great old ones from when either when we were kids or from before that
yeah,
they just really couldn't get the technology. Like the idea was there, the story. I was
yeah,
even thinking recently, as because it was so campy and it was great campy that if you did it now, it would have to be so different as Flash Gordon.
yeah, yeah.
Like, how would you do like some of the absurdity that
Yeah.
was that? But I mean, they've done that with some of these shows that are, with the Marvel universe that were kind of a joke,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
now
But
they're, it's
yep.
interesting. Um, what direction would you point somebody trying to immerse themselves in the design world, in the headspace, as far as books or other work? And how do you stay inspired?
Yeah. Well, first off, I would say if there's um somebody that is super inspiring in the design world, check out Dieter Rams, right? Like his
Oh
10
yeah,
principles are like the epitome of design for me. Like it's like, you know, I think we take it for granted. Like it's kind of instinctual now. Like, you know, those principles to me, but like, I think uh, if you adhere to that, you know, the honesty, you know, in design, um, you know, the whole business of design, you know, like having that be a part of your skill set. The Eames family also had like good principles in and around uh, design. Actually have a book that it's like their 12 principles or something like this, and um, that's inspiring as well. Uh, I'm inspired by the world around us, so it's like everything, you know, not just this film stuff, but like, you know, like the design world, the architectural stuff, furniture, fashion can be inspirational. New materials, you know, sometimes it's just even like, you know, it may not have like a great design sense. It could be something that's engineered, you know, even that like some algorithmic pattern or something that, you know, it's like, wow, that's a very, or even like the AIs today, like it's very inspiring to like feed it a prompt now and like, you know, you get some interesting visuals, but sometimes, you know, they might be a little bit off and you could do a paint over
right.
on it and you have something that's a little bit different, you know. I I'm a little bit leery of like solely saying something like AI, but like I feel like you know, for us when we were graduating, like CAD was actually relatively new, and like sketch tools were actually relatively new. And I think, you know, uh, just find it in the world around you and the experiences that you have, in and around the world you interact with. So
You know what I've found recently, because we now have the ability to do so again, is going to art openings
yeah,
and galleries and things where you can actually get hands-on and see some of these things again, rather than just through the screen and one person's lens capture of an object. Um, I, there's a couple of exhibitions I've been to where I had never realized the back of a certain object. I was like, that is almost more genius than what you always see, you
right,
know? And the resolution of a form, or um, what it has to sit on to make it look like this, that
right.
sort of thing. I think you had mentioned bring physical stuff, and as designers, a lot of our world is that transition now between physical and the metaphysical, if we want to get into what AI could be.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
you know um, so um, what would you say is a weakness new designers struggle with at a new job, and what are some techniques you would recommend for them to grow and build their strength?
Yeah. I would say a lot of the portfolios that we see sometimes, we see a lot of group projects, and then not knowing what it is that that candidate is doing on that project. And then we ask and we find out, and it's like, okay, well, what we really liked was, this this work you did here, and not maybe so much the research part of it, right? Um, I think it's important to do your research, right? But it's also important to have a point of view. And I think sometimes that is a little bit lacking. So, it is important to do research and actually, uh, learn about a certain topic or how people interact with a certain thing, and have that infer influence, some of your design decisions. But like, uh, I think it's also important to have a point of view, something that is um, presenting your take, like on a specific design, something that looks radically different or new, that's fresh. Um, I'm a little bit tired of seeing rounded cubes and speakers, that, and then you start asking questions to get a little deeper insight into why that thing is the way it looks, and just falls a little bit short. It doesn't really have like a point of view. Like, it's what kind of statements are you trying to make? What are the messaging stories that you want to tell with that object? And
Right. That's great. No, I think those are really salient things that our graduating students need to continue to remember as they're doing a lot of they do a lot of solid work, and then how to actually come across with that work and present it in a way that represents their point of view, not just the work they do.
also, I like hand sketches. So, like,
Sure.
it's rare to see a lot of good hand sketches, or sketches that, even if they're digital, that kind of thing, that's fine. Um, but so many projects that we do see, like, it's just the finished work, and it's like nice to see that process. It's like, if I were to walk up to you at your desk and say, "Hey, what do you think about this idea? And I want this cable to kind of route through this space, and could you communicate that, on a piece of paper and explain that to me? Like, show me." And I like to be entertained. Like, I like to see good work. And so if I can see it in the sketch as well, it makes me excited about you, it makes me excited about the project and those ideas also.
And I think it was kind of hammered home for us for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. I mean,
Uh,
I also think about the stuff that I do at work. Honestly, I wish I could do more hand sketches. I don't do as much as I used to. Like, if I'm going to be honest, like, uh, I don't do as much of that, but I do a lot of hand sketches in like meetings and that kind of thing where I'm trying to explain and show, and it is a form, it is a good communication tool to have.
I think it's not it's a good communication tool when you don't have access. You always have,
Yeah, yeah,
when you don't have technology, you can always grab a pen and, even a post-it note
yeah,
and communicate your idea. And the better you are with controlling your eye to hand on that, I think we actually have a professor in our department that always refers to sketching as the designer's handshake. It's like, that's how we know we talk to each other. That's how we go, oh yeah,
yep,
this is how you're thinking.
yep. I would agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. I always like to quote, his name is David Tubner, and he's actually one of the founders of this lecture series. So
Sweet,
it's always good to get a little plug in for him.
nice,
Um,
nice.
we have a question that kind of ties into how um, big tech and high tech companies like Samsung and Microsoft approach environmental issues. So, how, specifically on a team like yours, what I know we don't want to jump into the politics of it, but how do you look at the realities that we deal with in our world from a technological standpoint?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. Like, so it's very important to me, like this, our environment and like things that we create and produce and put out in the world, and like, uh, but and we've started some projects internally on our own team to like explore some of these things. How can we be better to our environment? In some of the projects that we do. But we actually have a really strong uh, um, team that's in and around like the environment and recycling, and actually, um, I forget the lady's name. And I don't want to do her a disservice, but she uh, works very closely in and around like ensuring our products are there's a recycling plan in play, for the entire corporation. Uh, um, yeah, there's measures to buy back some of these devices, like repurpose these devices. Um, I don't know if I'm the best person to talk about the granularity of like the things that they're doing within
Sure.
Samsung, but I do know maybe they don't do a great job of maybe messaging, but I only learned of this because I actually was like doing some research on this, and but it is on our webpage. You can actually find, not our think tank team info page, but if you go to Samsung's page, you can find out more about what they're doing for the environment, and which made me it encouraged me that more was actually happening.
It was
There was
beyond just the marketing of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But Microsoft, I'm for sure there's measures in place that they're taking, um, and I don't know.
From a design standpoint, though, as a designer, maybe your particular team is not. Do you know of any project teams that are within these corporations for somebody that might be
Yeah, our
interested
team
in really going. Yeah, okay.
is like one of those teams, right? So like
Okay.
we are thinking about this, and so um, there are some things I can talk about and some things I can't talk about. But like
Sure,
sure.
sure.
Like this is one of those things that I can't talk about right now. But we are creating objects that are not just you know ending up in the landfill, but are actually extending the capability of older devices and that kind of thing. You know, yeah, it is
Longevity is
important.
something that has always been kind of a Achilles heel of new technology, is that it's intended to have a short life so you can be better faster, and by creating a bit of longevity, you're actually making a significant dent in that
Yeah, no, it is
cost.
something that we think about. So like, sometimes some of the products that have been made in the past might have been not always thought of in that mindset with like making it accessible and easy to repair and those kinds of things. Um, when you think about phones, people think of them like almost disposable in the sense every 2 or 3 years they're replacing these devices, but there's no reason that they couldn't still have an extended life, even if it has a cracked screen, right? Like there's more computing power in the phones that we have now than, um, some of the cars and some of the spaceships that go into space, like it's, they're quite capable of having a much longer life than what they have,
Right.
materials are super important, what kinds of materials we use. Um, of course, we're always thinking about like how can we repurpose those components, possibly, for new products. So that's like one big major implement, I think, for like some of these buyback programs is that when they get these devices back, that people that we're actually, repurposing them in certain ways. I've heard that
Right.
like some of the materials are actually used from like recycled components and this kind of thing. Um, I don't know how much of that is uh, like an e-wash sort of thing, but like um, good to know that that is still at least top of mind, or at least there's some effort that's happening.
That's great to hear. Okay, so for our final student question tonight, I think maybe in light of the three topics that you brought up that are meaningful to you, when you go into a project now, what part of the design process do you still really enjoy? Like what's first in your mind?
The very beginning, of course, like it's always the very beginning of any project. Sometimes it's like it's the nuance of something. Somebody in a brainstorm session is talking about something, and it sparks some other conversation over here, and there's this sort of building and organic relationship you have with those beginning ideas, and then you know uh, if you have that intuition that it's a good idea and you want to make it happen and then see it through, then you start moving on to the next phases of any project, right? um, but I love working with like all the different members of the team, our team, and like having those conversations, and then it's like, okay, they have this idea, and then you offer something, it just makes it that much better, and then this other person's like, oh, what if it can do this or that, and then it just constantly builds and gets better and better, and then you start talking about, well, okay, what's the whole experience going to be like, and then you start mapping it out and thinking about that whole thing. But like I really love like the beginnings of a project, the brainstorming aspect and the development. I'm I'm also a little bit shallow in the sense that I love objects of desire, things that people want to like be attracted to, they want to like hold in their hands, and so I really get excited about the the when objects becomes more finished, and it's a real thing now. It's not just something we talked about. It's now a physical object. Um, yeah, there's we have so many projects that are like on the shelf right now that I'm just like, oh, I can't wait for these things to make it to market, and like people to also enjoy them and see them. So yeah.